Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 3. We'll be presenting about the impact of COVID-19 on the Malaysian economy. Our group consists of NURANIS AIDA binti RUSHAIDI, NURAINA INSYIRAH binti RUSMADI, NURAINA INNATI binti GAZALI, AFIFAH SAADAH binti AZMI, and NURUL ATIKAH binti YAZIZ. So, there are 3 sections in our report, which is introduction, result and discussion, and conclusion. Introduction is briefly about COVID-19 background and the impact of Malaysian economy. Result and discussion is about the economic issues from COVID-19, factors of changes and also solution. The last one is conclusion, is about outline the elements and measures implemented by the government.
Hi, I'm NURANIS AIDA and my number matrix 1202378. So, in this presentation, we will discuss the COVID-19 coronavirus outbreak, where it was first reported by China in December 2019, and this global outbreak of coronavirus has spread to hundreds of countries in a short time, and also can be deadly for some people. And the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed in Malaysia early in February 2020, where the spread of this contagious virus has led to Malaysia experiencing various crises, especially in the economic and health aspect, which are significantly worse than the previous impact that our economy has faced before. And the economy has declined because of government limitation on mobility, such as lockdown, where the impact of COVID-19 on Malaysia's economy was seen in the Malaysian ringgit depreciation against the US dollar, and followed by effect that influence changes in the price of rising commodity goods. And also the unemployment rate was considered higher than during the financial crisis that happened before. And not only that, the value of GDP compared to the national debt also rose, causing our country's economy to be affected.
Next is the result and discussion on the impact of COVID-19 to Malaysian economy.
Next, I will explain about the GDP growth. Gross domestic product is a monetary measure of the market value of all the final goods and services produced in a specific time period. GDP growth refers to the percent change in real GDP, which corrects the nominal GDP figure for inflation. As such, it also measures the income earned from the production or the total amount spent on final goods and services. From the news of an increase in the number of COVID-19 cases in early 2020 prompted Malaysia to impose travel restriction MCO1, including suspension of small and medium-sized enterprises business activities and export production. Small and medium-sized enterprises contribute 35% of Malaysian GDP and 17% of total employment. This caused the projected real GDP growth years over years to decline by 2.9%, and the value of real GDP lost compared to the 2020 baseline projection, 102 billion ringgit. The next issue is that GDP growth in the first quarter of 2020 fell 0.7% from 4.5% in the first quarter of 2019, and shows the influence of PKP on economic and financial development in Malaysia. Private consumption also fell by 11% due to loss of income. 40% of small and medium-sized enterprises are the verge of bankruptcy. At the same time, growth in government spending has stalled by 8.1%. Next. Q1 2021, less than expected after a 3.4% decline in Q4 2020. Furthermore, net external demand increased GDP by 11.9% respectively and 13%, when export and import increase also helped in boosting the economy in Malaysia. Furthermore, when vaccination increased, there will be a full recovery in economic activity, including trade and investment in 2021. Real GDP will grow 3.8% compared to 2019, or 0.29% of the 2020 policy line. Finally, various stimulus package by the government and central bank to support Malaysia economic recovery, such as caring stimulus and near full recovery, are expected to prevent job loss at 1.05 million.
Next, the impact of COVID-19 on the Malaysian export and import economy. As we know, import and export trade activities are one of the main roles in Malaysian economic growth. So, many organizations and companies in Malaysia exercising export and import because it is the easiest way to participate in global trade and also a quick access to new market. The export activity reached almost RM 1 trillion. Meanwhile, import activity amounted to RM 1.9 trillion in 2018. However, since COVID-19 began in Malaysia, the import and export trade economy has fluctuated and changed over time. There are massive disruptions in global supply networks, particularly in transportation of goods and services, and had a significant impact on industry. The pandemic also has disrupted the supply, which is the production distortion, and also demand, which is lower global demand. Malaysia also faced severity in food sector and rubber glove product. Malaysia's total exports fell by 26% in May 2020, which is the lowest rate in 11 years. Other than that, total imports fell by 8.3% in 2020, where during quarter 1, imports fell by 2.5%. In quarter 2, fell by 19.7%, in quarter 3, reduced by 77.8%, and in quarter 4, reduced by 3.3%. We can see that the number of import is increasing until the end of 2020. So, there are some factors that make the import and export rate changing, which is the government restriction on export and import, restricted SOP, weak domestic demand, weak manufacturing activity, fewer outgoing travelers. However, the number of import and export are increasing by the end of 2020 because of higher import of industrial supplies, moderate contraction in intermediate imports, lower domestic investment activities and household spending, lower number of cases and easing of MCO, government allowing economic sector to operate with less stringency.
My name is AINA RUSMADI and my metric number is 1202379. So I will continue to employment rate. One of the biggest job crises since the Great Depression has risen as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the issue and problem that arise was the use of technology in workplace is becoming increasingly crucial in the wake of the global health crisis. Digitalization and automation were two ways for firms to survive in pandemic. Those that are most affected by COVID-19 are also jobs that can be mechanized, either because they can't be done from home or because they have higher infection risk. Next, Malaysia's labour market has been impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. Almost all industries affected by the unemployment rate, which is expected to rise from 3.3% in 2019 to 4.5% in 2020. So the year 2020 was a hard one because many industries in Malaysia were affected by the epidemic. In addition to the airline industry, okay, so manufacturing is the most heavily impacted industry, followed by wholesale and retail, then accommodation and food and beverages. A comparable retrenchment occurred in several industries. So unemployment rate fell as schooling and training accounted for 42.6% of the outside labour force, followed by housekeeping or family obligation, which is 40.7%. As a solution, the National Recovery Plan (NRP) has advanced the process of immunization among Malaysians. As a result, most states have been moved to Phase 4 of the NRP, allowing for more economic, social and recreational activity. So the domestic tourism, which is a related company, also expected to have a good impact, including arts and others. Furthermore, Budget 2022, which focus on revitalizing the labour market, may help firms and people expediting the labour market recovery.
Okay, next, the COVID-19 also bring impact to the manufacturing sectors.
The sector's importance in the Malaysian economy emerged not only from the fact that Malaysia is the world's largest exporter of electrical and electronic items, but also from the fact that manufacturing now accounts for a large portion of the country's foreign exchange profits. Okay, for the past 3 decades, the manufacturing industry has been a vital part of the Malaysian economy. Manufacturing can be defined as the process of creating or producing items using machinery, labor, tools, and chemicals or biological processing or formulation. The manufacturing industry is also one of the important sectors in Malaysian economy. In economics, manufacturing is under secondary sectors, which is raw materials are converted into the final products. According to the Annual Economic Statistic 2018 manufacturing sector, value added of manufacturing sector increased by 6.9% per annum throughout 2015 to 2017. Value of gross output also increased by 5.7% per year in 2017 compared to 2015. Manufacturing sectors have been disrupted despite the operational permits that only allowed them to operate with 10% of their workforce capacity. The sectors involved are like automotive, iron and steel. Next, economy also faced a problem on supply shortage and delays on delivery goods or services. There are several factors that contribute to the decline in manufacturing sectors, such as implementation of the Enhanced Movement Control Order, or being called total lockdown, that have been implemented by the government, and that leads to a shortage of employees. This is due to the workforce capacity limits that have been imposed by the government. As a solution, government has allowed companies to operate when at least 40% of their employees have received a 2-dose vaccination. In June 2021, a national reopening plan, dubbed the National Recovery Plan, was proposed, laying out the conditions for social and economic sectors to return to normal.
In summary, the Malaysian economy is easing toward recovery, and the economy contract less as more restrictions were lifted, as evident by the reopening of more than 90% of Malaysia's economic sector, and the majority of social activities. Our economy is on the road to recovery from this pandemic, and growth will be driven primarily by the expanding budget 2022, as it will serve as the key engine of growth in the following, with a result of successful vaccination rate being achieved to prevent the spread of COVID-19 outbreak. Okay, with the right policy in place, Malaysia can start to thrive and experience a sustainable recovery, as in this year, economic growth has begun to return to normal as export and investment were increasing. Hence, many industries were able to recover some of their losses thanks to government incentive and aid that have been given to encourage our economic from recession. And that's all from our group presentation, and thank you for lending your ears.